Hey there guys, Gabriel from Vape Durango here, going to teach you how to rebuild a pod for an Orion Q. Super easy, kinda. There's 3 hard parts to this, but we'll go over that once we get into the video. So first things first, let's talk about the tools that we're going to need in order to do this build. And basically what we're going to need is, let's get a cup of water. We're going to need a pair of pliers. You're going to need your Orion Q, obviously. Some tweezers. A pair of scissors, some wire cutters, boop, 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 a pair of needle nose pliers, this coil jig, but you can use anything that's 2.5 millimeters that you usually wrap coils on. And this is a weird little tool that I had to make. So you don't have to make this. If you just have something long, skinny, and pokey, you can use it. I just grabbed a crappy old flathead screwdriver and bent it about 7 degrees to one side. So it's easier for me to stuff the content into the channels, but we'll get to that later, friends. So now we've got all of our tools set up. Let's talk about how we're going to take apart this Orion pod. So we've got the Orion here. Let's go ahead and pop the pod off of that sucker. So there's our pod. Now, on most of these, the tips come off very easily. You can just rip it off. If it's not coming off, grab your needle nose pliers, stick it down as far as you possibly can, kind of wiggle back and forth, and it comes right off. I'm going to bring the cup of water into frame, and what we're going to do with this is we're going to take all of our parts and throw it into the water. So the tip is in the water. Next thing is this airflow control ring right here. That just slips right off. Water. Now we've got the juice fill cap. Can you guys guess where this is going to go? Water. Now, the hardest part of starting this and disassembling the Orions is getting this dang chimney out. So I've tried multiple ways of taking pliers to them, I've twisted them back and forth, I've done a bunch of stuff. The easiest thing that I found is find a small little pair of pliers that can hold the base of this. So you're going to put it flush up against the chimney and flush up against the little chamber right here, the box, the pod, whatever the hell you want to call it. Now you're going to take your non-dominant hand and hold it with your non-dominant hand. You're going to grab another pair of pliers like this. What I like to do is just hold right here and wrench up, and that thing just pops right out. Cool? Water. So now we got our pod. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to get the old coil out, the old cotton out, and how we're going to do that is, see these 2 gold pins right here? These gold pins are the contact pins for the device. And what we're going to do is we need to get these pins out of the device. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this little pokey tool that we have, and I'm just going to start fishing around where we pulled that chimney out, and start fishing around until these 2 little things pop out. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull them out. They are crimped into place, so the easiest way for you to get them off, and don't worry about the crimping and all that kind of stuff, is just take a pair of dikes or wire cutters, whatever you call them in your part of the country, and cut it off. That goes in the water. So cut off at the wire, not the actual little brass part, and snip that, and that goes in the water too. So now you're just left with 2 wires exposed. There's multiple ways to get this out. I like to just kind of take my little pokey tool and start pushing it up to the top of the burn box. So we should probably define these things real quick. Where the chimney goes, that side is called the burn box side. That's what's got the coil, the cotton, the whole 9 yards. And the other side is just the juice fill side. So juice fill, burn box. So take your little pokey and kind of stick them up through those holes until you can see the coil assembly start to come out of the top. Then you're going to grab your pair of pliers and you're just going to rip that out. So there's our coil assembly with some cotton. It's pretty matted and nasty. Now, easiest way to do this is to just go over to the sink and flush it out with water real quick. So I'm going to go do that right quick. The temperature of the water does not matter as long as you get it clean. Now, the second part of this is you will do everything that we're going to do from here on out could be for nothing if you do not dry this pod out. If you don't dry this pod out very well, as soon as you put the coil and cotton assembly inside, it is going to get wet with water and it will not burn e-juice. So I'm going to grab a couple of Q-tips. I'm just going to stab them around the burn box side, kind of get these holes where those brass pins were, just anywhere that you see any kind of moisture, water, whatever. Take all of that out and make sure everything is nice and dry. So once everything's nice and dry, we're going to set the pot off to the side, and we're going to go ahead and start on our coil build assembly. So how the coil works is you're going to grab your coil jig. The diameter of the coil is 2.5 millimeters. The wire that you're going to require is Nichrome 80 28 gauge. I'm using kidney puncher wire. Shout out to you guys for making beautiful, beautiful products. So all you need to do is pull out about 8 to 10 inches. I always cut off more than I actually need. And what you're going to do is, because you really want to have really long legs for these things. So we're going to wrap it 2.5 millimeters. Make sure that you've got about a 2-inch or a 3-inch leg. And you're going to do 5 wraps, and you're going to space them. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5 wraps. And then pull your leg tight and kind of straighten this out as much as you possibly can. Now, you want to make sure that one leg is shorter than the other. This is very important. If you do not do this, the chances of you getting both pieces of wire into the holes in the bottom of the burn box is slim. So now we've got the 5 wraps with straight legs. One is longer than the other. And we're just going to set that off to the side. So here's the coil, if you guys want to see it. 5 wraps, no big deal. Nothing crazy, nothing fancy, not going to blow big clouds. That's not what it's there for. So after we do that, we need to pre-wick the coil assembly. So I'm using just a little swath of cotton bacon here. A couple of things. Obviously, if you're watching this video, chances are you probably know how to wick a device. If not, I'm going to just go over that real quick. It's the old adage is loose in the roll, but tight in the coil. So you never want to do this with cotton. You never want to go between your hands, see the size it was and the size it is now. That's bad. Juice cannot travel on this. So we're going to need to get something that's fluffy and airy, kind of like Gabriel Iglesias. And then we're going to twist off an end right here, and you're going to feed it through the coil. And I want to get this in pretty much as far as I possibly can. If you're having a problem with the cotton matting up and the coil doesn't want to move anymore, just pinch the cotton and kind of turn it, and then you can slide that coil along on it. So we're gonna, once we reach the midway point of the cotton, which is where we're at right now, you want to make sure that the cotton is not too thick and not too thin. I know that this is going to be an interesting experience for some of you. Just kind of play with it. Obviously, the thicker the better. The thinner you make this, the chances are of it, all the juice leaking into the burn box is significantly higher. So now that we've got the coil and cotton assembly done, what we're going to do is we're going to try to look down into the burn box side, and we're going to put these 2 leads into those holes. So one lead goes on one hole, one lead goes through the other hole. And just kind of finagle it and finesse it in there. Sometimes it takes a little while to find the right holes. All right, so that's good. So once you get both of the leads coming out of the bottom, I like to put a finger on top of the coil and kind of pull this bad boy through. Sometimes you might need a pair of pliers to help aid you in the pulling. So we're just going to pull that through and pull it all the way down to the bottom of the burn box. As far as you can pull it, that's as far as you want it to go. Now, make sure whenever you pull that cotton assembly, or that coil assembly in, that you've got 2 defined pieces of cotton off to the sides, okay? This is very important, a left side and a right side, because there are 2 holes that this cotton needs to go in. So like I said, we're going to pull tight on this coil, and what we're going to do is we're just going to push it up just a little bit. Just a little bit, probably about 1/8 of an inch. You just want to make sure that the coil is not sitting directly on the plastic on the bottom of the box. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fold these over right here to hold our coil in place. We're going to go fishing around in our water. And we're going to grab our little pins. Now the pins do have a rubber grommet on them. So I would like you to separate the pin from the rubber grommet, just like so. And we're going to take these little rubber grommets, after they're dry, of course, and we're going to slip them up over there, boop, and put them right back in those little holes. We're not going to put the pins in yet. The grommets need to go first. So once you get the grommets ready to go, I use a little pair of pliers, a pair of tweezers here, and just kind of push them back in their respective holes, just like that. And remember that that's 45 off to the side, or 90 off to the side. Now we're going to put our pins in. Pin number 1, pin number 2, oh, there we go, pin number 2. And then we're going to grab those big pliers that we were talking about earlier, and you are going to press these in. As deep as they'll go, you want to press them in. And don't feel bad about getting a little mannish on it. They do need to be driven in pretty deeply. So once you've got those driven in, you're going to stand up your cotton, or pardon me, you're going to stand up your wire, and we're going to cut as closely to those pins as we possibly can. 1, 2. And then let's go ahead and reset this other pin right here because it looks like it walked out a little bit. That's no big deal. If it walks out on you, no big deal. All you got to do is just cinch it back in and you're good to go. So the bottom of this is done. So now we come to one of the hard parts, is putting the cotton down into the channels. And it's going to be hard to show you guys how to do this on video, but basically inside the juice side there and the burn box side, there's a partition. And in that partition there are 2 holes, one here and one here. And your idea is you want to try to force the cotton through those and pull them out through the juice side. So what we're going to do is we're going to stand these cotton tails up, and we're going to cut that off like right there. So you're going to leave about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch on top. And you're going to take these, or the respective sides, and twist them. Make sure you don't twist the cotton pieces together, because then you're going to have a jumbled mess getting the cotton back in there. So hold on to the respective sides and kind of twist the ends off just like that. The first end that we're going to set is the right side. So I would like you to hold the burn box towards your body, the juice fill port away from you. And we're going to hold this left one in place. Here's that little tool that I told you guys that I created. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to take this cotton and you're going to push it up against that partition and then slide it all the way down and look through the juice hole, and you'll be able to see the cotton coming out of the juice hole side. You'll also be able to see all of that happening right here on the side of the device as well. So maintaining enough pressure to push the cotton through, but not enough to break the plastic. And then you can kind of go over here on the juice fill side and grab the cotton that you just pushed through and pull it through, just like that. So now you can see that there is a long tail of cotton sitting inside the juice box. Now it's time to do the other side, and it goes exactly the same way. So we are just going to push up against the partition until you see it reach the hole, push it through to the other side, come over to the juice box side with your fancy tool or whatever poker you decide to make or use for this project, and you're just going to keep on feeding the cotton through that hole and pulling it through by any means necessary. And once you get a long tail leg of cotton that reaches almost the end of the pod, then you're good to go. So also thing we want to check out is, let's look down here inside this burn box here, and I know the focus is probably not going to be good enough to see this, but the coil is sitting in here with 2 pieces of cotton on either side. There is a little small gap in between the cotton for airflow. So now this is probably 90% done. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come back to the second hard part of putting this thing back together. Let's reach into this water and clean all these parts, make sure they're all dry. So once everything's dry, we have to put this chimney back in. And the way that you put the chimney back in is you kind of got to do it by force. So the airflow is going to face, if you have the box sitting like this, the airflow should be facing you. So you'll notice there's a little beveled edge on either side. Just make sure that those line up. The airflow will always be facing towards you if the box is parallel, like this. I've got a little method that I like to use of putting this thing back in. I just take a screwdriver and hold it right there on top. And then we're going to grab our pair of pliers, and this might get a little loud, and we're just going to tap it back into place. And you're going to need to add some force to it to make it go back in. Make sure it's not canted off to the side or anything like that. I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I've got this extension with a little T6 on the end, and that seems to hold that in nice and firm. Now there's a couple of ways to get around doing it this way, but it'll create more airflow. So we're gonna try to just do it factory stock. If sometimes you cannot drive this chimney back in here, we're gonna have to do a little work. So it looks like this one's gonna be a little tight. So take your needle nose pliers and just kind of pinch this plastic around the box right here. So the little retainer that holds the chimney in, you're just gonna move just a little bit. So once all that plastic is kind of moved out of the way, it's a little bit easier to drive this thing back in. So now the chimney's in. Now it looks a little canted, so we're just gonna move it just a little bit. So remember, the airflow needs to be facing you like this. So now the next step is we're gonna take your airflow control ring and pop that sucker on. Then you're gonna screw the juice fill top on right there, and the tip goes on. We're gonna grab our Orion and clip it in. I have not put any juice in this, but I just want to make sure that it actually fires on the device before we go all crazy and try putting juice in it and all that kind of stuff. Got something going on here. It's not slipping into the Orion. There it goes. Okay, there's just a piece of dirt in there. So we're just going to fire the button once and just make sure if it's not blinking, then you know it's going to work. This will ohm out at a 0.1. Just like the original stock pods. And that's how you rebuild an Orion pod. Best of luck, guys.